Daniel never thought of himself as someone important. He was just another face among the many who worked quietly in the Queen's court. He spent most of his days fixing tools, repairing broken parts of machines, and walking through the grand halls without being noticed. No one cared much for him, and he had learned to be fine with it. Daniel did not look for attention. He lived quietly, waiting for each day to pass. On the day of the great gathering, the hall was filled with music and laughter. The Queen sat proudly on her throne, her silver crown shining under the soft lights. Nobles whispered and laughed together, wearing their fine clothes and showing off their jewels. Guards stood tall and serious, their armor polished bright. Daniel was in the hall too, sitting near the back. Never belonged to their world, but he was allowed to be there because of his work. Among the nobles was Lily, a young girl with a bold spirit. She was known for her laughter and her playful tricks. She had seen Daniel before, quiet and almost invisible, and on that day she decided to have some fun with him. She walked across the hall, her long dress flowing behind her. Everyone turned to see what she was about to do. With a playful smile, she sat right down on Daniel's lap. The hall broke into laughter. It was a harmless prank. Nothing more than a small joke to amuse the others. Daniel froze in shock. His face grew red as people chuckled around him. He wanted to disappear, to sink into the floor. But as Lily sat there, smiling proudly at her mischief, something strange stirred inside of him. It was a feeling he had never known, a heat deep in his chest, as if something long asleep had suddenly been shaken awake. Queen Alina, sitting far above, noticed it too. Her sharp eyes caught the faint glow that began to rise in Daniel's gaze. It was not bright, but enough to make her lean forward with interest. Or I'm son Visane why the sepulchre I'm right I'm sorry I'm sorry I'm sorry I'm says I'm some I'm say I'm by I'm sorry I'm sin I'm fine I'm I sifta saw since and saw sorry Lily, still seated on him, felt the change as well. Smile slowly faded when she looked into his eyes. Daniel stood up, and Lily quickly stepped aside. The room grew quiet. His heart pounded louder and louder. He did not understand what was happening. It felt like his body was stronger than it had ever been, like his skin carried an energy that could not be held in. The nobles looked at each other in fear and wonder. Whispers spread through the hall. Some thought it was a trick. Others believed it was a sign. Queen Alina raised her hand, and the room fell into silence. Her voice was calm but filled with power as she spoke. She told everyone to remain still, to watch and wait. Daniel felt their eyes on him, but he could not move. He was trapped between confusion and fear. Lily stepped closer, her voice soft now. She told him she was sorry, that she only meant to play. Daniel shook his head. He knew this was not her fault. It was something far greater than either of them. The Queen's gaze stayed fixed on him. She saw what others did not. This was no ordinary man. Deep inside, a force older than the kingdom itself was stirring. A protector, long forgotten, had begun to rise. The prank had woken more than laughter. It had woken the beast within. The silence in the hall felt heavy after the strange glow in Daniel's eyes. No one laughed now, and even the music had stopped. The Queen kept her gaze locked on him, her crown glimmering under the lights. The nobles shifted nervously, whispering to one another, wondering what they had just seen. Guards tightened their grip on their spears, waiting for the Queen's command. Daniel stood frozen, his chest rising and falling, as if his breath could not keep up with what was happening inside him. Lily looked at him with wide eyes. She had only meant to tease him, only meant to make others laugh. Now, her prank had turned into something far more serious. She stepped closer, her voice low so only he could hear. She asked if he was all right, but Daniel could not answer. His heart pounded hard, and he felt a strange pull in his mind, like voices calling from far away. Images flashed in his head, visions of battles and fire, of a land in ruins, and of a figure who stood alone against endless enemies. Queen Alina raised her hand, and the whispers stopped at once. Her voice was calm but strong as she asked Daniel to step forward. Slowly, unsure of himself, he obeyed. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the ground itself tested him. When he finally stood before her throne, he lowered his head out of respect, but the queen did not look at him with fear. She looked at him with curiosity, as if she had been waiting for this moment. She asked his name, and he answered simply. She asked about the light in his eyes, but he shook his head. He told her he did not know. His voice trembled, but there was truth in his words. The queen studied him for a long moment, then turned to her court. She told them all to leave the hall at once. Though they hesitated, the nobles and guards obeyed, their footsteps echoing as they left. Only Lily stayed behind, standing at the edge, unsure if she was allowed to remain. The queen let her stay. When the hall was empty, Queen Alina leaned forward. She spoke in a quieter tone, asking Daniel if he felt something stirring inside him. He admitted he did, though he could not understand it. He explained how it began the moment Lily had sat on him, how it felt like a door opening deep inside. The queen nodded slowly, as though his words matched what she already knew. She told him stories of old times, of a protector chosen by fate, a man who would rise when the kingdom faced its darkest hour. Daniel shook his head. He could not believe it. He was no hero, no warrior, only a worker who fixed machines. He said he was not worthy of such a thing. But as he spoke, another vision struck him. He saw fire in the skies, the city walls breaking, and the queen herself standing in danger. He gasped and grabbed the edge of the throne to keep himself from falling. Lily rushed to his side, steadying him with her hands. She asked what he saw, but he could only whisper about war and destruction. Queen Alina listened carefully. She did not dismiss his vision. Instead, she said that the kingdom's peace had been fragile for years. Enemies watched closely, waiting for a chance to strike. Perhaps his awakening was not an accident. Perhaps it was a warning. Lily's face paled as she realized what her prank had truly caused. She had woken not only a man's hidden strength, but also a destiny tied to the survival of everyone in the realm. Daniel lowered his head again, ashamed and afraid. He begged the queen to release him, to let him return to his quiet work. But the queen only shook her head. She said that some paths cannot be turned away from once they begin. She told him his power would not allow him to hide any longer. Lily placed her hand on his arm, her voice soft but steady. She said she would stay with him, no matter what came next. The queen rose from her throne, her robes flowing behind her. She told Daniel that the world beyond the palace was already shifting. She had seen the signs, and now with him standing before her, she knew the storm was near. She called him not a worker, not an ordinary man, but something greater. The hall echoed with her final words that night, words that marked the start of his new life. She said the protector had awakened. The next morning, the palace was filled with whispers. Servants carried trays and paused to share rumors. Guards spoke in low voices, their eyes filled with unease. Everyone talked about the strange light in Daniel's eyes and the queen's choice to keep him close. Some believed he was dangerous, while others thought he might be a savior. No one could agree, but everyone agreed on one thing. The court would never be the same again. Daniel sat quietly in a chamber given to him by order of Queen Alina. The room was large and bright, a place far finer than anything he had ever known. Yet he did not feel at home. He paced back and forth, his mind heavy with the memory of the visions. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw the walls burning, the cries of the people, and the queen in danger. He wished he could push it all away, but the images returned again and again like waves he could not escape. Lily came to see him. She entered the room without hesitation, her bold spirit unchanged, though her face carried guilt. She told him she never wanted this to happen, that she had only been playing a joke. Daniel nodded and told her he knew, did not blame her, for the power inside him had been waiting, ready to awaken no matter the cause. Still, Lily said she felt tied to his fate now, and she promised she would not leave him alone. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled as she spoke. Soon after, a messenger summoned them both to the great hall. Queen Elena stood before her council, her voice calm and strong. She told them that Daniel's awakening was no accident. She believed he was the protector spoken of in old stories, a guardian meant to rise when the kingdom was close to ruin. The council argued, some saying it was foolish to believe in legends, others saying the signs were too clear to ignore. Daniel listened in silence, feeling the weight of their words press down on him. When the council asked him to explain, Daniel spoke of his visions. He told them of the fire, of the enemies breaking through the walls, of the cries of the people. The hall grew silent, as he described it. Though his voice was simple, his words carried truth that none could deny. Even the most doubtful council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The queen said that the visions were not dreams, but warnings. She said the kingdom had grown too comfortable in its peace and had forgotten the dangers that waited beyond the borders. After the council ended, the queen asked Daniel to walk with her. They went through the palace gardens, where the air was cool and filled with the scent of flowers. She told him stories of the first protector, a man who lived long ago and defended the realm when darkness threatened. She said the power was not chosen by men or women, but given by fate itself. Daniel listened quietly, unsure if he wanted such a role. He said he did not think he was strong enough, but the queen stopped and looked him in the eyes, saying that true strength often comes from those who doubt themselves most. As they walked back, they passed soldiers training in the courtyard. Daniel felt their eyes on him, some filled with respect, others with suspicion. Lily walked at his side, lifting her chin with quiet defiance against anyone who doubted him. She whispered that no matter what came, he would not face it alone. Her words gave him a small comfort, though his heart still carried fear. That night, Daniel could not sleep. He stood by the window of his chamber, looking out at the stars. The visions returned again, sharper this time. He saw shadows moving in the distance, armies gathering, and the sound of steel clashing in the dark. He gripped the edge of the window, trying to steady himself. For the first time, he understood that the danger was closer than anyone realized. The prank that had started as laughter had woken, not only his hidden strength, but also the storm that waited just beyond the horizon. The days that followed were filled with unease. People in the palace spoke in quiet voices, their steps softer than usual, as if they feared to disturb something fragile. Outside the walls, rumors spread across the kingdom. Travelers carried stories of strange lights seen in the sky and of whispers about a man with the power of old legends. Some called him a blessing, others a curse. No one could say for sure, but the kingdom was restless. Daniel spent much of his time under watch. The queen had ordered him to remain in the palace, where she could see him and guide him. Though he felt trapped, he understood her reason. He often found himself walking the gardens late into the night, trying to calm the storm inside. Every vision grew stronger. He saw enemies in armor, carrying banners of war, and he heard the cries of the people. Sometimes he woke with his hands shaking, unable to breathe. One morning, the queen called him to her private chamber. Lily followed close behind, unwilling to let him face it alone. The queen looked at Daniel with steady eyes. She told him that power without control was dangerous, both to himself and to those around him. She said he must be tested, to see if he could master the strength that now stirred within him. Daniel lowered his head, admitting he feared what was happening. Still, he agreed, for he knew running would change nothing. The trial was held in the courtyard. Soldiers stood in rows, watching closely, their armor shining in the sun.
Ow.
The queen sat on a raised seat, her gaze firm, while nobles filled the balconies above.
Ow.
They all wanted to see if the quiet worker truly held the power of a protector. Lily stood near the edge, her hands clenched tight, her eyes never leaving Daniel. The captain of the guard stepped forward to face him. The man was tall and strong, skilled in combat, known for his loyalty to the queen. He held a wooden staff, not a blade, for the queen had ordered no blood to be spilled. The trial was not meant to kill, but to measure. The signal was given, and the captain moved first. He struck quickly, his staff aimed at Daniel's side. Instinct guided Daniel's body. He moved faster than he thought possible, dodging the blow with ease. The crowd gasped. The captain pressed harder, striking again and again, but Daniel blocked each strike with his bare hands. Sparks of energy rippled through him, unseen, but felt by all watching. The wooden staff cracked where Daniel's hand touched it, though he had not meant to harm it. Fear and wonder filled the courtyard. Daniel stumbled back, his chest rising fast. He begged for the trial to stop, afraid he would lose control. But the queen signaled for it to continue. The captain rushed forward once more, but this time a burst of force erupted from Daniel. It was like a wave of wind, invisible, yet strong enough to send the captain flying across the courtyard. Silence fell, broken only by the sound of the captain hitting the ground. Daniel stood frozen, his hands trembling. He had not wanted this. He felt shame and fear, believing he had failed. But the queen rose from her seat, her voice clear. She declared that the power inside him was real, and though untamed, it was not evil. She told the people that Daniel was chosen, not by her, not by the court, but by something greater. She said he would learn to master his strength, for the kingdom would need him soon. Lily rushed to his side, her hand gripping his arm. She whispered that he was not alone, that she would not leave him no matter what others thought. Daniel looked into her eyes and felt a small measure of calm return. Yet even as the trial ended, he sensed the shadows drawing closer. Outside the walls of the palace, the enemies of the realm had heard of the Protector's awakening, and in their dark camps, they began to prepare for war. The night was heavy with silence, but beyond the palace walls, danger was already moving. Scouts rode in with grim news. Enemy forces had crossed the borders and were marching toward the city. Their banners carried symbols of hatred and greed, their armies large and merciless. Fear spread quickly among the people, and the sound of hurried steps filled the streets as families prepared for the worst. Inside the palace, Queen Alina gathered her council. Her voice was calm, but carried urgency. She said the kingdom must stand and fight, for running would only bring ruin. Many looked uncertain, their faces pale with fear. But her words carried weight, and slowly, they nodded. Still their eyes drifted toward Daniel, the man who had become the center of all hope and doubt. Daniel stood apart, his hands clenched tight. He did not want this fate. He wanted to be the quiet worker he once was. But deep inside, he knew there was no return to that life. His visions had not been lies. The storm was here, and the queen, the people, even Lily, all stood on the edge of danger. He felt the beast inside him stir, not as something cruel, but as something that demanded he rise. When the first horns of war sounded, the city shook with panic. Enemy soldiers poured through the outer fields, their torches glowing in the night. The gates of the city shuddered as rams struck against them. People screamed, children cried, and the guards shouted to hold their ground. Daniel walked to the gates, Lily at his side. She tried to stop him, her eyes filled with fear, but he told her softly that he must do this. She nodded, tears falling, and whispered that she believed in him. The gates broke, and the enemy stormed in. Chaos filled the streets. Steel clashed, arrows flew, and the night was drowned in fire. Daniel stepped into the battle. At first, the enemy saw only a lone man. They rushed at him, swords raised high. But when Daniel lifted his hand, a wave of unseen force sent them crashing to the ground. His eyes glowed with light brighter than ever before. Each strike of his hand, each step he took, carried power beyond human strength. Soldiers fell before him, not knowing if they faced a man or a storm. The queen watched from the balcony, her heart steady with hope. She saw in him the protector of the old stories, the guardian promised by fate. Lily fought her way through the crowd, helping those who stumbled, guiding children to safety. All while keeping her eyes on Daniel. She saw the fear in others turn into awe as they watched him fight. He was no longer invisible, no longer the quiet worker in the shadows. He was the shield that stood between them and death. The battle raged deep into the night. Daniel's strength never faltered. He moved with fury, yet his heart remained clear. He fought not for himself, but for every soul behind the walls. When the enemy brought forth their strongest warriors, clad in black steel, Daniel met them head-on. The clash shook the ground, sparks flying with each strike. The beast within him roared, but it was not a roar of rage. It was the roar of a guardian who refused to let his people fall. At last, the enemy broke. Their courage shattered, and they fled into the darkness, leaving the fields littered with their fallen. The city was safe, though scarred. The people filled the streets, their voices rising in cries of victory. They called out Daniel's name, their protector, their savior. He stood in the center, weary but unbroken, his chest rising with heavy breath. The glow in his eyes faded slowly, leaving him once more as the man he had been. But now he was more than that. It was a legend. Queen Alina stepped forward, her crown shining in the light of the fires. She declared before all that the protector had returned, not by choice, but by destiny. She said the kingdom would endure because of him. The people cheered, their voices echoing into the night. Lily ran to Daniel's side. She placed her hand on his arm, smiling through her tears. She reminded him of the prank, the simple joke that had started it all. He laughed softly, the sound tired but warm. He told her that her prank had woken not a monster, but the strength he never knew he carried. Together they stood as the city rejoiced, knowing that from that night on, the tale of the prank and the beast would live forever.